As all of you know, I, as an opinion host, revere honest journalism. I view straightforward and legitimate news as essential so conservatives like me can formulate informed opinions. As you also know, fair and honest journalism is rare in the United States these days. Most members of the press dishonestly and intentionally taint their news coverage with their inappropriate and cancerous left-wing bias. But could that be changing in one position on the cable dial? Americans deserve an honest press, not what we have now. We dispense one or two truth bombs in tonight's preamble. Here on the Chris Salcedo Show, we let you hear from as many sides of a political debate as possible, but we have never hidden the fact that this show is a conservative opinion show. We present the news, then give you our conservative take. No woke extremist tuning into the Chris Salcedo Show could ever miss the fact that we are a right-leaning opinion show. Contrast us with the majority of the press. Now, they claim to cover news. They claim to be fair and impartial, but the vast majority are left-wing opinion shows. But they never admit that to their audience. In essence, left-wing news channels like CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, and NBC lie to their audiences every day by not being honest about the point of view they use to approach their news coverage. Far from being a benign lie, when facts are sacrificed for narrative, it could cost people their lives. That point is illustrated by left-wing censorship from social media companies like YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Google. But it's also true in the mainstream press. In an editorial piece titled "We Failed," a left-wing biased Danish newspaper confessed that the publication, along with the wider mainstream liberal press, hadn't been vigilant enough in questioning narratives put forward by government authorities during the China virus pandemic. And this rare mea culpa to the public, on behalf of the Fourth Estate, Denmark's highest circulating newspaper is admitting that journalists worldwide, instead of rigorously and inquisitively covering the pandemic, they have borne greater resemblance to official government mouthpieces or government stenographers. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis recently lamented the biased press selling out our people's freedoms in an effort to deliver a political victory for left-wing extremists bent on control.
Some of these leftist TV hosts who constantly criticize Florida, mandate masks, lockdown, all this stuff, then they end up on the beach somewhere in South Florida. I'll tell you, one of the things I'm proud, though, is like our Floridians, they give these people hell when they see them down here because they're proud of our freedom and they know these people have been bad-mouthing. So we created T-shirts that said Escape to Florida, the Lockdown Liberal Tour, and instead of having concert dates on the back, we had Governor Whitmer, March of 2021, AOC, and the dates they were all in Florida.
But the biased press, they didn't cover that hypocrisy because the liberal press cares more about Democrats ruling over your life than they care about your freedom and prosperity. But that might, and I want to stress, might be changing at one left-wing media source. It turns out that a major Trump donor, John Malone, is the chairman of Liberty Media, and he is also the largest shareholder in a company called Discovery. This company just so happens to own CNN. Now, does Malone want to turn CNN into right-wing central? No, far from it. Malone wants to restore CNN to impartial journalism after decades of left-wing bias. After it came to light that Jeff Zucker was having an inappropriate relationship with one of his subordinates at CNN, Malone reportedly insisted on Jeff Zucker's departure after the affair was exposed. The idea of CNN returning to legitimate news coverage is causing wide panic. Folks like us here at Newsmax, we're not worried. But left-wingers across the fruited plain are petrified that CNN will no longer be the place that overlooks the harm being done to our people by Democrats and their socialist policies. One guy who is really broken up over the prospect of CNN going legit is none other than the former host of Fox News Sunday, Chris Wallace. He's reportedly, quote, irate that Zucker is out the door. Now, I imagine that Wallace was looking forward to frolicking in CNN's Trump-bashing, conservative-hating, anti-freedom playground. And now it looks like that might not happen. Now, think about it. Without CNN leading the way, how will Chris Wallace and other left-wing hosts spin stories like this? The Biden regime is set to dedicate your taxpayer dollars to the distribution of crack pipes to drug addicts as part of its plan to advance, quote, racial equity. Now, which race do you think Team Biden equates with crack pipes? Joe Biden and the left-wing extremists who are pushing this sick and twisted policy have dedicated $30 million to nonprofits and local governments, they say, to help make drug use safer for addicts. The Department of Health and Human Services, run by a guy, Javier Becerra, who has no medical experience, will disperse your taxpayer dollars to buy, quote, smoking kit supplies, end quote. Spokesman for the agency told our pals over at the Washington Free Beacon that these kits will provide pipes for users to smoke crack cocaine, crystal methamphetamine, and any illicit substance. Applicants for the grants are prioritized if they treat a majority of, quote, underserved communities, including African Americans, as established under Joe Biden's executive order on advancing racial equity. You heard that right. The guy who said, if you don't vote for him, then you ain't black, is also putting out a policy that says crack equals black. That notion, of course, is absurd. In fact, I've nicknamed this program the Hunter Biden Initiative. Hunter is lily white, as all of you know. It's an established fact that Hunter Biden has a long history with illicit drugs. That history has led to his being thrown out of the U.S. military and allegedly to several troubling videos out there. Democrat-run cities such as San Francisco and Seattle have experimented with programs like the Hunter Biden Initiative. In recent years, other governments have stopped the practice over concerns buying crack pipes and needles for junkies would enable drug abuse. Who could have seen that coming, right? Louisville, Kentucky, and Baltimore, Maryland ditched their distribution plans after facing backlash from local law enforcement and African-American leaders who didn't appreciate their neighborhoods being destroyed with a crack drug culture. Can't imagine those black leaders were all too thrilled about crack being equated with black either. Here on Newsmax, you get to hear the left-wing perspective, and we don't treat the GOP like pariahs. The mainstream press has abandoned all ideals of fairness and are watching their audiences shrink while ours continues to grow. Americans deserve a fair and honest press, and we deserve honest debate from both sides of the news. From my vantage point, it looks like the American people are finally ticked off enough to demand a fair press that they deserve. Let's just hope left-wing censors and stiflers of free speech are not allowed the power to take all that away.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.